We're going to talk about South America, Africa, BRICS, not construction bricks, but BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, SCO, and some things that are happening around the world that's going to impact the United States and you. Today on The Worldview. Welcome. Worldview this week is going to include a lot of different things. So I just want to tell you that right off the bat. We're going to go basically just about all over the world if we can. And we're going to hit everything that we can think of. So what we're going to talk about today are many different things. But the one area I want to hit first is the giving of F-16s to Denmark and the Netherlands. To Ukraine from Denmark and the Netherlands. This is extremely important. I cannot tell you how important this is. Basically, what this does is this gives the Ukraine almost top line fighters that we have had in stock in the United States since they started coming online around the 1980s. So they're 40-some years old. I mean, actually about 40 years old. And they've had many different shoot downs. The Israeli Air Force actually had them, and that was the first combat shoot down by an F-16 was by the Israeli Air Force. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, and that was in the 1970s. So we're talking about a pretty interesting history into the F-16s. Now, as an ex-Air Force person and as an Air Force intelligence individual, ex-Air Force intelligence, I'm going to tell you that this is the absolute wrong move. We should not have allowed anybody to give F-16s to Ukrainians, and we should not have given approval for that. This is going to bite us in the butt in the long term. I'll tell you why. There's a couple of reasons why I would never do this. One is when, not if, when an F-16 is shot down by a Russian aircraft, specifically close to the border, the Russians are going to do everything possible to get that aircraft. So there better not be, current electronic warfare stuff or anything else on that aircraft, because the Russians will get that and they will reverse engineer that, and they will be able to defeat the F-16. So we're not talking about, and they'll share it. The Russians will share it with the Chinese. They will share it with any country that is a friend to theirs. They will share it with. So this is a very, very big problem from the standpoint of U.S. national security. So the only thing I can hope is that the F-16s that are being given to Ukraine are not going to be, and I shouldn't say this not to bust on the Danish or the Netherlanders, the Dutch, is that they're not going to be of the same caliber, the same currency that we have here in the United States. So I just, I mean, F-16s are still a very powerful aircraft. They're still very good. They've done very well. The F-4 before it was also extremely well done. I mean, the F-4 was built in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and that thing lasted until the 80s. And it was an extremely, extremely powerful aircraft, very good at everything it did. And the F-16 kind of took over for that. So basically what's happening is that the Ukrainians are getting a top-line fighter, and they're going to be able to use that. But let me tell you something. This is not, and you're going to hear this from many other different, many other different media, is that they're not going to be able to fly these things for at least 6 months, if not a year. I mean, plus you're talking about fuel, you're talking about maintenance, you're talking about equipment. I mean, the Russians just need to sit there and target airfields, target maintenance areas, target those areas, and they'll put down those F-16s. So, I mean, so How does this get solved? I mean, when we're talking about Ukraine, how does it get solved? Well, first of all, escalating the war is not going to solve the war. That's number one. Sanctions are not working. They're not working. The Russians are just kind of taking it. So that's not working either. The mistake, and everybody is going back to February, 2022, whenever people sat that back and they said, oh, this is a real, we should have done this, we should have done that. Guess what? It's too late. The shoulda, woulda, coulda thing is over, but in the future, if somebody puts 100,000 troops or whatever amount of troops up against your border, then the U.S. has to come on right now and say, we're going to put U.S. people in that country. If you go over that border and one U.S. person is hurt or whatever else, then we're going to come after you. And that is the way to stop this stuff right off the bat. I mean, to sit there and say they're never going to invade and then they end up invading, I mean, that's just craziness. Russia has had a history. Whenever they put troops up against the border, they're going to invade. That's what they're going to do. I mean, so I blame the intelligence people. I blame the historians. I blame everybody who sat back and said they weren't going to invade. They were wrong, absolutely wrong. And I, working at Roku TV, stated they were going to invade, and everybody laughed at me. So it's like, sorry, I was around when they were the Soviet Union. They haven't changed much, folks. They, yes, they're civilized and they have all the other things go along with that. But basically, the Soviet Union lives on. I mean, they've tried to throw that, oh, yeah, it's all democracy. Really? I don't see Putin as a president. I don't see Putin as a democratically elected leader with 90% people voting for him. So this is a really, really bad situation. And the U.S. is making it worse by giving F-16s to Ukraine. Now, do I have an option? Do you have an option, with what to do with this? Well, the first thing you better do is you better train these pilots really, really, really well. Second of all, you better make sure that when this war finally ends, when it does, and Ukraine is, you better make sure they're not corrupt. You better make sure that they're not going to just sell out to another country or whatever else, because those F-16s are going to end up in countries where we don't want them to be. So this is a really, really big issue with me from the standpoint of national security. And I've seen us give stuff away in the past, and this is giving away the farm to me, because F-16 is so powerful. It's such a really, really good fighter. So we'll see what happens. Hoping that I'm just gloom and doom and it'll work out fine, and we'll move on. So enough about Ukraine. Let's talk about Niger. So this is something I found on BBC. Excellent. Thank you, BBC. Niger coup leader, General Chiani, the ex-UN peacekeeper who seized power. When I saw this, it was like, are you kidding me, man? So basically, once involved in peacekeeping efforts in war-hit countries, General Chiani is now triggered a major crisis. So this guy was, and this just proves to me that the UN doesn't have a very good way of vetting their military people from the state. But Niger, by means that he is in Niger. But I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, they're and let me tell you something about Nigeria and the rest of that. So ECOWAS, Economic Council of West African States, right? They stated this. I think it's I want to say almost a month ago, 3 weeks ago, that if Niger did not give the president back the presidency, that they're going to give him 1 week, and then they were gonna take military action. Well, guess what? They haven't done anything. Nothing from the standpoint of military action. Yes, they've stopped the different aspects. They've stopped the electricity and things running from Nigeria to Niger and all that stuff. But the bottom line is they've really not done anything of consequence, this General Chiani. So basically what's happened is, again, another red line that's been crossed, and nothing's happened. It happened in Syria when President Obama said, look, you're going to get rid of all this stuff in a week, or there's going to be, heck to pay. And they never did it. And, then all of a sudden, Kerry, who was Secretary of State at the time, said, oh, well, they have to do this and this and this and that. Well, Assad says, oh, yeah, sure, we'll do that. We'll get rid of all our chemical weapons and do all that stuff. And they haven't done that. And we sat back as the United States of America and let that happen. Let it happen. Talk about a sign of weakness. You don't, if you're going to break somebody's arm, if you say you're going to break somebody's arm, you ought to break it. You don't sit there and make idle threats. And unfortunately, that's what the U.S. is known for now, is idle threats. So I just, oh, we'll do sanctions. Yeah, great. That's super. Thanks. So I mean, tell the Ukrainians that, tell the Niger that, tell anybody that wants to listen. And other countries are taking our example in hand, like Nigeria, and sitting there saying, well, we said we were going to do something, and we're going to kind of build these military stuff up and do whatever. You should have done that before you made the threat. Before you made the threat that you better do this in a week, you should have had all that military set up, ready to go at their border. And then you should have said, look, you have 1 week. If you don't get it done, gee, who did that last? That was George Herbert Walker Bush, when the situation in with Iraq, sitting in Kuwait, he gave him a date. They didn't do anything by that date. Boom, he went in. That's what you have to do. You have to live up to your promises. If you make a promise, then by God, you better do it. And the United States is getting further and further away that stuff. And I don't understand. Yeah, oh yeah, we'll give you money. Thanks for giving away our taxpayer dollars. Really, really appreciate that. That's helpful. So that's Niger. So then we got to pop over to. So let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about where we are. So remember, we just talked about Niger, right? And that's over here. Right, and we have Nigeria. So here's Niger right here, right? Nigeria is here. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to move all the way over here to Ethiopia in what they call the Amara region. The Amara region, see, they've had some problems up in this area here, some rebel action, whatever else. All of a sudden now, the Amara region is giving them problems. So this is, and this is Africa. There's a Horn of Africa. Here's, Ethiopia. Very important to understand all the geography here. Very important to understand that. So why are they doing that? So here's the here's the new conflict, right? And this is the, in the Amara region, they're fighting the army. So now we're, they have northeast of that area, northeast, and now we have a problem. So there's a lot of issues within Ethiopia, and this could cause a big problem for that region. I mean, Ethiopia, although they don't have any coastline per se, they still have important minerals in important areas that they need to have mining and that type of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all works, right? So that's this is what we're talking about, and that's where we're having an issue from the standpoint of Africa, right? Okay. So let's turn our attention now to BRICS. B, Brazil. R, Russia. I, India. C, China. S, South Africa, where right now, this week, they're having a BRICS meeting in South Africa. Now, Russia's not going to go there. Putin knows better, because the minute he comes off the plane, they're going to try to extradite him to the International Crime Council. So he doesn't want any part of that. Although he says, he's going to be there virtually. Well, good for him. So basically what's happening is there are other people that want to join BRICS. Why is that? Well, Reuters says it, BBC says it, and it's goes something like this. The United States right now is one of the strongest, if not the strongest currency in the world. But to use the currency and to be part of that, there are certain rules and limitations that the U.S. sets so that there's no, there's no laundering of money. There's nothing. In other words, it's set by the United States so that the currency is used correctly, or within moral and ethical reasons, right? Well, basically, the Chinese are saying, "Hey, join us. You don't have to worry about the U.S. anymore. You can use the Chinese currency." So all of a sudden now a lot more people are getting into this, and they're saying, well, maybe that's true. Maybe, we're sick and tired of the U.S. setting all these rules on us. So we're going to start to, expand our economies and see if we can do better with other countries. And that's why this is happening. Specifically, and extremely important, is Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is trying to join this area. So and it's so funny that what's happening is the I wanted to show you real quick. Here we go. Ethiopia. We just talked about Ethiopia, right? So why do they want to join? Why does Ethiopia want to join? Well, because they're in chaos right now. And the Chinese have promised not just economic aspects, but also, hey, we'll help you. Maybe we'll put some bases in there, help you economically, that type of thing. Bolivia, Indonesia, Egypt, Cuba, which they need help. The DRC, Comoros, Gabon, Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan. So what is Kazakhstan? What does that have to do with? Kazakhstan is also a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Kazakhstan is also a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO. And the SCO has all kind of different countries in there, including, of all things, Pakistan and India. Both of them, both Pakistan and India. So here's what's happening. Argentina wants to join. So what? So Argentina wants to join. So what's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. First of all, Argentina just had an election, and the center-left individual just won. So what's going on here? What's going on here is that Argentina may see, geez, a good, solid economic plan by saddling up to the people that are part of BRICS and expanding that area so that they can now take advantage of a growing economic power in China and India. And it's interesting because a lot of people think, India is this developing country, which it really is. But like I've said, on program after program after program after program, they know coal now. They are putting coal to work. They are making steel. Think about this just for a second, as to steel production. Look it up. How much production of steel is being done in the US? How much is being done in India? And what's the growth rate there? It's just not, steel is not as big as it used to be. So now in the United States, so India is really working hard to try to make themselves above that developing country, and with the climate change stuff, and climate change, they're developing countries, so they're going to get reparations. They're going to get reparations from the climate change people, because they're a developing country, and they haven't they haven't been able to take advantage of the pollution making stuff that the United States did back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. So there's all kind of issues with that. Now, and let's talk about climate change just for a second, because I think this is really important. Let's talk about climate change, because I think, okay, climate change is caused by carbon emissions, right? This is according to the climate change people. Carbon emissions, carbon dioxide, right? Big time problem. Japan's number one on that. US number two. India is moving up quickly on that. So basically, what's happening is that a lot of carbon emissions. Well, let's talk about carbon emissions just for a second. First of all, we just gave F-16s. F-16s are not electric. F-16s aren't. They work off jet fuel. In fact, there's been a lot of explosions, been a lot of dust and dirt, and all these things are coming up as a result of the Ukraine war. You talk about climate change and contributing to the carbon footprint here. I mean, amazingly so. Diesels, all the equipment that's being done there. The explosions, again, dust, particulates in the air. These things are all over Eastern Europe. So, I mean, we have to sit back and say, exactly what is it that we're striving for here? What is it that the world is striving for? And don't give me the line here that I've been fed for whatever. We got to keep ourselves before a 1.5 centigrade rise. We're past that. We're past the 1.5 centigrade rise. Now they're saying, well, now it's going to be two degrees, or now it's going to be 2.5 degrees. Everything constantly has this, well, we got past that, and it wasn't Armageddon, it wasn't apocalypse, so I guess we need to, move up, just move the things up. Well, it's going to happen quicker at a 1.5 degrees. That's like, yeah, okay, fine. I mean, the story changes, and it changes once a target is met or gone above. All of a sudden, it's another target. They've done that. The Club of Rome has done this type of thing. The world is going to end by 1972. Then it's going to end by 2001. Then it's going to end by 2010. It's going to end by 2020. It's going to end by 2050. It goes on and on and on. So that's something that's you have to take into consideration. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the Argentine election. Now, so that's Argentina. What about Ecuador? Well, Ecuador is having all kind of issues because their candidates are being assassinated, literally being assassinated by a group within Ecuador. I mean, this is not good, folks. This is not good. Now, Ecuador is named Ecuador because it's very near the equator. So this is what's happening right now. So here's assassination, Fernando Villavicencio, and so I mean, they, the candidates talk about peace and security, and let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs just for a second, because I think again this is very important. We need to understand where we are from the idea of theories and concepts and things like that. So Maslow hierarchy of needs. So we're gonna talk about the Maslow hierarchy of needs just for a second, and this is important. So Maslow hierarchy of needs, and here's how it works. It's a triangle. It's actually a cube, or it's a pyramid, but actually it's kind of that way. And what happens is this: is you have at the bottom of that triangle thing, you have physical needs. Physical needs include food, sleep, drink, all the things to keep you physically okay, keep you from starving or whatever it is. Above that is security. So you have physical needs, and then above that is security. And those two things right there, many countries don't have. When you take a look at someplace like Ecuador or Ethiopia or Somalia, or some of the places, Kenya, not Kenya, but some of the places that are in deep issues when it comes to those types of things. I mean, even Ukraine. I mean, look at what's happening in Ukraine right now. People are starving. So what happens is when you have when all you need is food and all you need is water to exist, to live, you and your family, all of a sudden it's like, let's talk about democracy. No, let's talk about food. I need to have food and water. My family needs to have food and water. So everyone talks about, well, I don't understand why they just can't have democracy. It's because they're down here. They're not up here. After they have to know that they're going to get food and water and just the basic aspects of roof over their head. The next thing is security. They have to know that they're not going to get shot when they move out of their house, when they walk down the street. So safety and security is really the way it goes. Then you have belonging after that. Then there are things that happen before you get to that self-actualization stage. And that is very, very, very important. And that's why gangs, erupt and everything else, because people don't have a sense of belonging. And all of a sudden, people offer them food and they offer them clothing and they offer them all this stuff and security in exchange for joining their gang. So all of a sudden you sit there and say, well, gee, I can get food and I get water, I can get sleep, I can get, I don't have to worry about sleeping out in the street or whatever else. I just all I have to do is join this gang. Sounds good to me. So those are the things we have to take into consideration. Yeah, and that's why it's very, very important to, I mean, we're way beyond, the United States is way beyond all this stuff. I mean, most of us, when you get up into the self-actualization stage, and that's when you get into the not weird stuff, but unique things, like all of a sudden they're talking about, it's, equalization and equity and all these other things. There are people that don't have food to eat. There are people that don't have water to drink. There are people that don't, they're not worried about equity. They're worried about getting their next meal. So, but we don't have to worry about that because we're okay, and from that standpoint. And that's a shame because basically instead of helping other people, basically we're going into, ourselves here. So that's not good. So that's basically, I just want to give a little bit about that because I think that that's important to understand where everything is. And speaking of where everything is, I think we need to sit back and say, where's Ecuador? So we're going to just pop over to South America here for a second and show you some of these areas because I think this is important. So here is, when we talk about, here's Colombia, here's Venezuela, here's Central America here, and here's Ecuador. Relatively small country, but look at the port area. Lots of port area. Look at Peru, lots of port areas. So that's big. That's a big deal from that standpoint. And that's why Ecuador is so important. Right? Because they go here, they go around Panama, and bang, they can come here. They can go into Cuba, Haiti, all these areas, and including the United States and other Central American countries. So that's the situation there. So that's what's happening in Ecuador, and it's really a shame because it's happening. Of course, we already talked about Argentina. So what? So Argentina. Let's talk about this. Exports. This is who they export to: Argentina, Brazil, the United States, China, almost as much as the United States, Chile, and Vietnam. So that's something to consider, and that's something we need to understand exactly what's going on there. So uh, here is March 29th, 2023. And I've already talked about this, but I think it's important getting back to Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Riyadh joined Shanghai, the SCO. Yeah, what's Riyadh? So what? So Riyadh is, who cares? Well, the problem is that this is, when you're talking about Saudi Arabia, you're talking about oil, lots and lots of oil. China wants that oil. They want to have that oil. They want to be able to control that oil, and they will, because they're going to put, everyone thinks that China is just a facilitator to this stuff. They're not a facilitator, folks. They are controlling. They want to control this. So I think that's very important to understand. And finally, I just wanted to give a few minutes about congratulating the Spanish women's soccer club for defeating England in 1-0 in the World Cup. And I want a lesson to be had here. This is going to be a little bit of editorializing. I'm sorry, but this is something that I played soccer in high school and college. The U.S. went into that. I really long for the days of Mia Hamm. Mia Hamm, was a very big inspiration to my daughter when the Women's World Cup, when they were really good, and they, Brandy Chastain and the rest of them, they did a great job of literally being altruistic and not being arrogant and not thinking that the minute they walk into a stadium that they're going to be given the greatest, here I am type of approach. So I'm hoping that the U.S. women, as a result of this embarrassing outcome from the Women's World Cup, will take time to sit back and ponder this, be introspective about it, and learn. Hard lesson learned, but it's learned, hopefully, that you sit back and you now consider yourself to be in building mode, and you're going to build a good team, and you're going to go to the next women's event with humility. It doesn't begin with a U, it begins with an H. Humility. You have to be humble. When you go in there, you don't think of yourself as gold medal winners. If you do, you keep it to yourself. You're very humble the entire time, and with that humility comes good, solid character. And hopefully, this coach will learn from that, and will learn from the situation that happened overseas in Australia, and they will make the adjustments necessary to be able to do that. I know people do not like me saying this stuff, but you know something? There are probably more people that agree with me than people that disagree with me. And I for one am sick and tired of the United States walking in and thinking that they're going to be the next gold medal winner. Humility is the way to go. Mia Hamm once did not sign an autograph because the individual wanted her to sign it on an American flag. And she explained she didn't do it. And then she explained, my father is a U.S. veteran, and I will not sign or otherwise do anything to a United States flag that it would consider to be not a good thing. And I've recognized that. Now that was almost 30 years ago. I was there that day. My daughter was there, heard that. I cannot tell you one. I want to see an individual on the women's soccer team in the United States do that and say those things and mean those things. And I think Mia Hamm should be held up as, and she was, and she still is, as an individual that is very, very important, not just to this country, but also to the United States soccer situation there. So based on that, and I'm sorry to get on my soapbox, but I just want to say that we are the United States. You know, we have to set the example, and I think it's very important to be able to set a good example. And I think this is very, very important. So on that note, covered a lot today. Please take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and always, always, always have a worldview.